it's Jen Varela from Sugar Night Night here for our listening and learning series. And I'm so excited and honored today to have Charmain Utz, and she will be talking with us about how to raise inclusive children and the 30-day bias. So I am going to invite her now, and here she comes. And just couldn't be happier to have her. Just so honored. She is here she is. She's connecting. Yay!
It worked.
We did
I'm
it.
so sorry.
No worries.
That's so my fault. My fault.
No, you're good. We're all learning. This is only my second one ever. So here we go. And I want to do a proper introduction. So I'm going to read my introduction I wrote for you. And I'm just so glad you're here. So I really am honored to have you. So this is Charmain Utz, and she's a licensed clinical social worker. Mm-hmm. She's the founder and CEO of Living Unapologetically. And she's created this great 30-day bias challenge, which I'm currently doing and being challenged. And she also does bias coaching for individuals, groups, and consults with agencies too. And I just love how you introduce yourself in the 30-day challenge workbook. So I'm going to read that introduction because I just think it's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So I'm in the business of people, helping them sort through the gray areas and the things they find really hard and want to avoid. One of those things I love to do, and I believe I'm good at, is helping individuals and groups have more difficult conversations. I've learned that the more people exercise being uncomfortable, the more likely they are to engage in those uncomfortable spaces again. And here we are in an uncomfortable space on Instagram Live, right? So who better to have on this listening and learning series and to help us navigate the conversations with our children on bias and privilege and inclusivity than Charmaine. So I just really am happy to have you here and just to have this conversation about the biases that we have, conscious and unconscious, and all of that. So thank you so much for being willing to be here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm grateful you reached out.
Yeah. And that so yesterday we did a little conversation of okay, how are we approaching this? And you had kind of a cool question for me with that yesterday that we thought maybe it would be a good way to start this whole conversation.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what the question was, but you were sharing about how talking about this can be uncomfortable and can bring up some things in you, worries about maybe saying the wrong thing, and just being mindful that you might not get it right in the way that you want to. And you had shared that you planned to approach it a particular way. And so I just loved what you said, and I felt like it was a really good way to start this off. And so maybe if you don't mind sharing what that was for you and just how that conversation went.
Yeah, and I thought that would make a lot of sense because I'm a sleep coach. Why am I doing this listening and learning series, right? I'm not a parenting coach. I'm not trying to become like a podcaster or anything like that. So, and I don't know why this time with this social injustice, this racism that's happening all the time, has always been happening, but it has affected me in a new way. And I guess, you start when you start to be aware. I think I just always felt like empathy was enough, and how I handled myself personally and how I raised my kids was enough. And it's just become not enough for me anymore. And I just felt like I've been given a really huge opportunity to have a platform where I get to talk to parents who have entrusted me with their trust, which is precious. And I want to be a good steward with that platform that I've been given. And so I heard this saying lately, like stumbling bravely. I always call it walking with my knees knocking. If I wait till I feel totally comfortable, I probably wouldn't do half of the things I do in my business as an entrepreneur and whatever. And so I just really feel like with the Sugar Night Night platform, I have an opportunity to highlight and amplify the voices that really need to be heard. And as a parent, I'm always looking for where's my blind spot? How can I improve my parenting? How can I love my kids better? And so I do think it is tricky to know how to raise our kids in this world with all that's going on. And so I thought this would be a really great opportunity to talk about how can we raise inclusive children in their thinking. And then honestly, this is one of those times, I hope I'm saying it right, which is BIPOC is now kind of is that the appropriate term now that people are using? Still Black, what do we say?
Yeah, you know what? It is becoming much more popular, and it's hard to say just use that one because different people respond to that differently. So, I consider myself Black and a person of color. I haven't really got on the BIPOC train yet, but there's nothing wrong with it. So I'd say it's in professional spaces that it's becoming much, much more common. There's nothing offensive about it per se. So if that's what you want to use, you can totally use that.
And so here's a good question. As a white woman, I always was like, okay, do I say Black? Do I say African American? Like how, like what's appropriate? You know, I want to be so respectful. And I have always just kind of like, I'm not sure exactly what's, you know, nobody likes to be categorized per se as a object. So I don't look at it from that standpoint, but I also want to affirm and elevate in the way that I articulate about all this. So what advice would you give, you know, me in that regard?
I'm smiling because this has come up a lot. I see it in groups too, where people are asking like, what's the right one? And there isn't a right one, which is what makes it so hard. It's another personal preference thing. I say Black. I don't say African American, but I have plenty of friends that do because it just means different things to us. I've seen in more spaces that people feel much more comfortable saying African American. There's something that feels weird for people by saying Black. I don't know that personally because I say it so freely. But so I can't necessarily tell you to say this one thing because it doesn't mean the same thing for everybody.
Gotcha.
But if I had to just look at it a little and do any kind of generalization, it feels like African American is something that is used much more often, and it's easier for people to navigate. But I mean, if you say Black to me, I'm not going to blink or anything. So I can at least tell you what it means to me, and also just say that when it comes to this space that, yeah, people have their preferences, words mean things, and just being able to like talk about it like this is important. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me just come a little raw, right? And so, well, tell me a little bit about how did you even start this work? You know, working on bias, and maybe, you know, give a little insight on what bias is, or how you see it with, you know, how that affects our daily life, and why you started this kind of work.
Yes, so that's actually a pretty loaded question, and I'm gonna do my best to just chunk it in the pieces that that are important. It's actually pretty important to at least know. So I'm half white and Black, and the way that I was raised was pretty separate from my Black side. So I grew up with like one frame of thought about the world, and it wasn't until I got to college basically that I was introduced to a lot of different things in the world that I just didn't know existed, and that made me face what I thought about other people, including my own people. I had a ton of biases against Black people, against gay people. It was pretty strong. And so I had to go through my own very painful process of acknowledging the things that I felt about people and learn how to redo that, or at least to stop the thoughts and figure out a different way to interact with the thoughts. So a lot of it was just personal. And then along the way, I found that I was helping other people do the same thing. And then I was in professional spaces and I was doing the same thing. And it really started growing from there, that people would come to me to help them navigate hard conversations and look at themselves and what was going on inside. And it just kind of like hit me one day. It was just such a spiritual experience that, hey, maybe this is the work that you're supposed to do. And when I settled on it, it just kind of, all the doors opened and I knew it was the right path for me. And so since then, it's just really rewarding, and people are hungry to do this kind of work. but people don't know how to do it. So it's just a combination of my life experience and doing a ton of research and trying it out with other people that I approached this work the way that I do. And then, biases in a very quick nutshell is it's really just like these quick judgments that we make, these associations that we have about people and things that tell us what category that we put them in and how to act accordingly. The difference between, because people will talk about biases overall, I think most of the time they're talking about unconscious biases, but there are conscious ones and unconscious ones. The conscious biases are the ones where people know they feel this way about a person and just act accordingly. It's very
no filter. Just let it ride. This is how I think. I'm just going to say it, and no apology on it. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And the unconscious ones are the ones where we don't know they're in there, and we act according to the associations without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And the biggest part being that they are oftentimes really not in alignment with how we really feel about people, but we don't know, so we act that way.
So if we actually looked at the person and saw them as a person instead of just responding how we've always responded, we might not actually choose to respond that way if we were aware of that. Is that kind of how you're saying?
It could be that.
Okay.
And because it's really hard to reprogram everything, but if we can at least be aware that we have the thoughts, then we can stop the immediate action.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of having a better relationship with that.
So if you're even just aware of the fact that you've got this bias, then you'll be able to identify it when it comes up in the moment, and then more able to identify it allows you to take an action step, because maybe your intention would be different than what your pre-programmed bias is, right? And so that makes sense to me. I also just have to laugh, the reason why I'm a sleep coach is because I have a little guy who's now not so little. He's 17 now, almost. And he is that quintessential alert on FOMO baby. And so getting him to sleep was really challenging. And I'm kind of a crazy sleep coach because tears make my ears ring. I get lightheaded and feel physical pain. So I couldn't do any of the harsh sleep training stuff. So I had to figure out another way. So I had to do really a lot of hard work to figure that out and face what I could do or I couldn't do and how to make those adjustments. So therefore, I'm a really great sleep coach because I understand the struggle and I understand how hard it is. So I really appreciate your background and sharing your background because it makes so much more sense to me now. You had to do some really hard work in order to get here. And then that's what allows us to stand in the gap with someone else, is because we've had to do that work, right, to get to here. So that's fascinating to me. So I know that the 30-day challenge is a PDF, but I did print mine off and put it in
amazing. I love it.
I know how I am. If I can see it and it's on my desk, then I'll do the work, right? It'll be so I kind of needed that visual. So I think, I was surprised on the 30-day challenge. I guess I was, I have to say, it kind of took, I didn't start on the day that I got it. And there's definitely oh crap, I'm going to do some hard work again. Right. And, and so I can see already that resistance that I had, even though I've just dived in deep with trying to learn. I'm watching so many, different Instagram lives and stuff that I would have never been drawn to before, just to learn and digest. And but it was just interesting that my own resistance in starting, even knowing that you and I are going to do this. So there's some real accountability here. I'm not going to have you on Instagram Live and then not have done any of the 30-day challenge, right? Well, I guess one of the things I was surprised about too is that I expected okay, it's this heavy journaling every day, but it really is you can just take that one still quiet moment to spend just a little bit of time to focus on the questions you're asking. And it doesn't have to be, an hour's worth of my time in the day, right, to do this. That was a pleasant surprise. And so I would love to hear a little bit about the 30-day challenge and what that's about. And then let's go into some of the stuff for the parents. But I think it kind of starts with us as parents, right? So if we do the work, then we're going to be able to be more present for our children in their questions. And so describe, share whatever you want, like kind of what the 30-day challenge looks like to you and why you created it.
Yeah. So one of the things that in my contact with people, working with them in this area, that comes up is people always asked how they talk about this with other people. That was just all the time. And I realized that there's this want to talk to other people, but there was little understanding of how that looked for them themselves. Like, it's one thing to have the tools to have a conversation with someone, but if you haven't worked that out within yourself, it's going to be really hard to go into these conversations with other people.
Yeah.
So I kind of like shifted and was just really having to reflect on my own process and dissecting that. And I started testing some stuff out with people that I knew to see like how this worked. And I realized that that was where people should start, with themselves. You cannot have conversations with other people unless you have them with yourself. That's my personal belief. And so I had sat on this for a while. I was trying to figure out like how to put everything in a package for people to get it, because this is lifelong work. And there isn't a way to say, here's a course, you are officially on top of all of your stuff.
Come on.
It's not a thing, you know? Yeah.
Right?
And I was just talking with a friend of mine, and she had mentioned a challenge for something else. And literally just in the moment, it was like, oh my gosh, that's the thing. It's like a starting point for people to get a window into what the work can look like for them. And so the 30-day challenge isn't necessarily to, like I said, make all the biases go away. It's to help people know what it feels like to have these conversations, to just pay attention to everything that's happening in the process, because this is what's going to continue to happen. The questions are built in a way to create safety first, and then look at it a little bit more globally, and then you start diving into yourself to hopefully bring out some themes or sore spots, if you will, so that you can make a decision about whether or not you want to continue this work and do something about it. So it felt like good dosage for people to just get like that window in, like I said, and
starting point that isn't quite so, you're not trying to do an 8-course meal all at once.
Right.
You're like,
right.
Hey, we can start with the French fries. That's okay.
Yeah. And I love French fries. Okay. Let's start with that.
And I'm just saying, I really appreciate that the way you set this up is that we can start with something that's a little more attainable and reachable. And yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And so when you find that someone like starts the 30-day challenge and all that, do you find in 30 days though you can like unlock something enough to, you know, start a new momentum, or, you know, like, you get what I'm asking on that? Like, I want to make this, I guess what I'm trying, maybe I should speak from a personal standpoint. This is super uncomfortable for me to do something that's outside of my lane being sleep coaching, right? But I also just recognize that, like, who do I go to find, you know, a resource or whatever? I go to those that have already done, like, they kind of know the connection, or there's someone who's really good at getting resources, or, you know, someone I trust, right? And so that's why I'm doing this, is because I just want to be, you know, a good steward in that regard. And so when I got that, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do in my heart, I'm like, well, I need to do this in a way that's sustainable. Like, I don't want to just go, okay, we had this big, you know, week where we did the black square, and then I was torn about that, because then that didn't feel right. So I took my black square down, and I, you know, and I highlighted someone's voice, and then it's like, okay, so I, you know, like, how do I do, I'm looking at this more as like a marathon than looking at this as like a sprint. And so I wanted to create something that I could do this listening and learning that was something that was sustainable. And so I'm looking at this 30-day bias inward challenge as sort of a way to crack open, so that once it's open, it's a lot harder to shut it back down again, right? As a place for me to keep keep going and checking in. Am I supposed to keep doing this? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? So I don't have like a permanent solution that this is what I'm going to, you know, do every month or whatever. But for as long as I'm feeling like it's valuable, I'm going to look for, like I had Terry on, who's this amazing doula that has a really great perspective on the Black community and what happens with postpartum depression, mood and anxiety disorders, and support. And it was just an incredible conversation with her. So, and I'm just like delighted that we can kind of go a little more like straight up with, why am I doing this with you? And I'm hoping that having done this makes it so I have a new platform mentally to push off of, and then I don't slide back into empathies enough. So I guess that would be my question, is on that, how do you see people experiencing that? Does that make sense? I kind of rambled.
It does. I think I get where you're going with this, and what I tried my best to make clear is that this challenge is to guide people on their own journey. People participate in this for their own personal reasons. And unfortunately, I can't give people all of their action steps, because everybody's journey is different and where they're at is different. What they want out of it is different. So people can choose to do the challenge just to say they did the challenge, you know, similar to like a black square type of thing, you know, and walk away and say, okay, I did some hard work, and move on. If you're doing this challenge and you're digging deep, you're gonna bring some stuff up. Stuff's going to come up for you to look at. And it's on each individual person to decide if this is something that they want to do something about. So if you're doing this challenge and you see a few sore spots and you choose to not do anything about it, that's your choice. And at the same time, you're choosing to not do anything about it. So I would say that people will get out of this experience whatever they choose to. There is an opportunity at the end for you to really reflect on what all of this has been like for you, and to put on a piece of paper what you want to keep working on. The writing down of goals, as you may know, is different than saying, I want to keep doing that thing. I can't tell how many times I said that to myself. When I wrote it down, it's different because you're holding yourself accountable.
Totally.
So
totally.
I hope I'm answering your question. It's not like one particular thing that you can.
No, I think you did. Okay. And I think, you know, it's interesting for me. So I'll stay in, you know, my personal zone here, is that I wish I could say I've made big changes, like great changes in my life, because it was the right thing to do. And I'm going to say, honestly, any significant change I've done in my life, it's truly been because it was more uncomfortable to remain the same. And so I know for me, I think in this situation, it became more uncomfortable to remain the same. So yeah, I don't know what this all looks like for me. And it may be that just a few of these learning and listenings is what I was supposed to do, or, you know, it may be that we keep exploring all this. So I do love providing practical tips to my clients and the Sugar Night Night community. And being that I'm a sleep coach, I thought it would be kind of cool to maybe talk about it from, you know, the reality of bedtime. There's an opportunity to do some reading and do some books. And so what are some tips that you have for parents of young children? So my audience is mostly children under age 5. Okay. So what are some thoughts you have on that? What are some practical, like, you know, they may have toddlers and newborns, and doing the 30-day challenge right now is just not even like in the realm of feasible, right? But that doesn't mean they can't do anything, right? And so just love to hear a few thoughts from you on that, some practical tips and ways to support our parents.
Well, one thing, so you and I were talking a lot about books, because people read books to children before they go to sleep, and it really had me thinking about just representation across the board, because I don't know everyone's bed-night routine, but there are just lots of things in children's lives, and when you look at what they're exposed to, like the representation of we were talking about race and ethnicity. The representation there is important. So even in like something as simple as books, what kinds of books are you reading to your children? And I started doing more thinking about that too, that sometimes books, they have beautiful stories, but then there are also opportunities to talk about what's in the books. So I know, I think you're going to share like a few resources on titles that people can take a look at.
Give me 4, and I will definitely put them in the post so they can easily find them.
Yeah. And then I'd say, you know, when
and
people...
what you're doing, I'm just going to read them in case somebody doesn't look at the post. So, and forgive me because I'm not even going to try to pronounce most of the authors' names, but if you Google, you'll find them. So it's A is for Activist was book number 1. Number 2 was Sulwe, so it's Sulwe. The next one was Hair Love, and the next one was The Shoemaker and the Elves. So I'll definitely put those in the post. And there's a great link that you gave me too, to look at an article about like 16 other great books to look at. So sorry, I just thought I'd interrupt just in case there's that mom that's like, yeah, I'd like to look, but can you just tell me? Right?
Yes. So, the other thing, so I don't have children, so I'm not going to act like I have them. But I do find myself being the person that a lot of friends come to have these kinds of conversations. And something that brings parents a lot of like weariness, maybe anxiety, is how to talk to their kids about stuff. It's like, when do you have the conversation? That's always a thing. And you know, depending on like who you are, there's a lot that's being brought to light now that some parents don't really have the option to wait to have conversations because of what's happening in the world, and it's just part of reality.
Totally.
And you know, given that, I would say something similar to all parents, that you know, kids pick up a lot of stuff. You know, they watch, they see, they have questions, and I think that people can navigate harder conversations from an age-appropriate way. Something that is useful to a lot of my friends is they put things in the context of at least like fairness, because kids can hold on to fairness as a concept.
Yes, they can, can't they?
Yes. It's hard to explain like racism, but you know, like fairness, if you find some words that make sense. But you can talk to kids about stuff. Sometimes kids will even like have questions, or you'll see or hear something and kind of note it, but you don't know what to say, so you don't say anything. I think another tip is to be curious about that. You know, it doesn't have to be accusatory, but what are you seeing in your kids, or what are you hearing? And if they have these questions, what would happen if you don't, you know, respond to them? And if you don't have the answer right away, can you find an answer? And you can tell your kids that. So I think sometimes we're so protective of, because we don't want to put messages into like kids' minds. It's like they're getting messages from everywhere and everywhere, and so are we. And so when we don't take the opportunity to have difficult conversations, even at a young age, we're just missing a lot of opportunities there to give different narratives. So I guess like the practical tip is, I know it's uncomfortable, but can you lean into age-appropriate conversations? You can do it through books. You can do it through talking, or maybe you see something in your kids, or TV and movies. There's so many things that you can just pause and talk about. And then if you don't know how, there are ways to find ways to do this. You know, like if it's not in your immediate circle, there's so many resources now and groups that are out there for people to get answers to those questions. So I'd say that. Another one, this isn't necessarily bedtime related, but I did think about it when you asked me this question, is, you know, parents model for their children. So if we're working really hard to get representation for children in a bunch of different ways, be it games, toys, books, and all of that, is there representation of different types of people in your life, in what you are exposed to, because your children are watching you? So I would say that that could be really cool to look at what you are intaking and just reflect on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. You know, it kind of makes me think of too, so it's going on that practical side. So my husband's Hispanic, so I have these beautiful babies. And my daughter Molly, when it was, you know, let's get her a baby doll, you know, I was really like mindful, like, you know, all the baby dolls I had were very white. And and
mine too.
There we go.
Yeah.
And so I was so excited that American Girl Doll would make these baby dolls that actually had skin tone that was the same as hers. And it was really fun to get that for her. And then as we've been talking, it kind of made me think about like, but how cool would it have been if I had mixed up her baby doll selection and had done maybe actually some African-American Black, you know, dolls in her, and I never did that. I ran across this really cool, I just think they're so neat, and they're actually sold out through August, so just so you guys know. But it's Harper Lynn Man dolls, and I think it's Harper and Man dolls. Anyways, I'll put that in the post too. And I know like one of the things I encourage my clients to do is, especially for toddlers, is have a little lovey. So when you go to bed, you have a little something to snuggle and cuddle. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like doing, you know, being, as you're mentioning, like, what do you have in your life that you kind of, you know, have a diversity in? What is that like kitschy? Is that like, oh, come on, Jen? Or is that like, you know, what are your thoughts on doing something like that?
Yeah. I think anytime someone makes a change like that, people do question, are they doing this just because they're supposed to, right? Like that's always a thing. I don't know if that's going away anytime soon. But then there are people who make choices because they really want to start making changes and they see and understand what's happening. So I guess the thing that came into my mind is if people are just going out to buy dolls without any like thought or awareness, that would be a little worrisome. But as we're talking about this entire discussion, I would say, I feel like it's a wonderful thing to do. I really do. This question doesn't necessarily come up with gender. You know, like kids will get dolls of different genders and not even think about it.
We've had Ken dolls for forever, right?
Yeah, pick it up, play with it, no big deal. But when it comes to ethnicity, race, it just makes people uncomfortable. But I mean, you have different gender dolls because, you know, diversity in that sense. It'd be the same thing in my eyes. And I have lots of friends. I have friends who are white who have dolls that are not white for their kids, and they love them because they just want different dolls in their lives, different things to play with that don't all look one particular way. And I was just talking to my sister about this because my sister she always gives Black dolls to her friends as a way to like represent like her. And she was saying that it's so funny because kids really latch on to the dolls that like look different than everything else that they have. And it's just like really sweet like story, but that was a side note. I'd say that it's a really great idea thinking about diversifying what you're exposing your children to. And even though there's this like natural inclination that's uncomfortable around race and ethnicity, think about how you don't question it when it's around gender. You know, it's the same concept and you can still lean into that. There's nothing wrong with it. I would absolutely encourage it, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. I could go on and on. And maybe we'll have to do it again.
Totally, let's do it.
Yeah, and I also know too that like the amount of time that people have to even watch these things is minimal. So I wanted to do what we could to kind of have a real conversation about it and give some new ways to think about it, whether you have the time to actually do the 30-day challenge or it's a small shift in like being a little thoughtful about what bedtime book you're going to pick next for your kids to read. And so maybe we could end with a little bit, I know there's some changes coming up with the 30-day challenge. You want to talk about that and then maybe mention your website and all that so they would know where to find it.
Yes. So yeah, I rolled this out as a free challenge, and it was always my intention to have it be that way. But things have changed. A lot of people have signed up, and I have to pay for some stuff on the back end. So as of July 1st, it's going to be available for purchase only on my website, and which is livingunapologetically.com. And then the other thing is I'm actually working on a like full-on course to do much more deeper work around biases.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that I can launch that in August. That is my hope, but I'm working really hard on it to get it done.
That's great. Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, making a course is a big project, so that is really exciting. So, well, you'll have to tell me when it's live, and we'll make sure we'll announce it so that people know to find it. And I will put your information in the post on how they can get a hold of you and learn more. And I just thank you so much for doing this and taking my like random sleep coach. Okay, she wants to do a live request. I really appreciate that openness. And I just thank you for being, you know, a leader in this time where we need to take some introspection. And so thank you for your time, wisdom, and for a conversation from heart to heart. So I appreciate you a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a great time. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, and it'll be posted up in Instagram, IGTV, so people can refer back to it. So thanks for coming.
Sounds good. Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.